From Rehmann, Managing Principal Dave Page, and Senior Manager, Director of Capital Management Group, Max Wellinger. Hey guys.
Great to be here.
Hey, Bart.
Yeah. Great to have you here. Dave, welcome back, and Max, your first time here.
That's right.
Nice, great to have you here. How long have you been with Rehmann?
For coming on up on a year.
So. Awesome. Well, the year you were at Rehmann, we want to look back on 2023. In terms of investors, how did last year shape up?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, 2023 shaped up to be certainly a whole lot better than the year prior. I think coming into 23, there was this sort of narrative that higher interest rates would send the economy crashing into a recession, and ultimately that didn't happen. We've seen GDP growth remain strong, unemployment's been really low, consumer spending has chugged along and been really, frankly, very robust. And most importantly, we've seen inflation come down. So that's put the Fed in a position where they could stop raising interest rates and signaled now that they'll begin cutting rates at some point this year. And with that backdrop of strong economic growth and lower rates, we just saw a really nice rally in the capital markets, especially towards the end of the year. S&P 500 finished the year up at 26%, so a pretty incredible year there. International stocks were up 16%, even bonds were up around 5 or 6%. So I think investors had a lot to be happy about, that's for sure, especially those who are invested in those large cap growth stocks.
Yeah, so all of those points that you bring up, you look at all the indicators, but people still think the economy's not good, and it's I think because people are seeing it at the supermarket and the prices. It's still inflation, right?
Absolutely.
So we're seeing inflation. Is it a result of everything that's happening elsewhere, or is it just a byproduct of it's just part of time marches on?
Yeah, I mean, things have improved, fortunately, but inflation is very much still an issue. And it's hard to pin it on any one driver, but we definitely saw inflation peak coming out of the pandemic. You had consumers who were kind of flush with cash, and they went on a spending spree at a time where supply chains were really disrupted. Then you had Russia invade Ukraine, send the price of commodities up, and we had inflation peaked at 9% in 2022. Since then, it's slowly come down to around 3% today. So definitely an improvement, but that's still an inflationary environment. It's above kind of what the Fed targets at 2%, but it does seem the worst is behind us, considering a lot of those issues we've worked through. The economy's starting to normalize a little bit. So things are, maybe we kind of settle in that 2 to 3% range, but I don't see us going back to 7, 8, 9% anytime soon. At least let's hope not.
Well, Dave and I remember when we did have inflation at rates that were double digit. You probably don't. So is there perspective from experience that would color our opinion of how the economy, what inflation's like, what the markets are like?
The reason there was a widespread expectation for a recession to happen last year is because historically, when inflation runs up, the Fed raises interest rates, it often is overdone and sends the economy to kind of a grinding halt. But that hasn't happened. So it seems like the Fed might pull off this so-called soft landing where they tame inflation without bringing on a recession. I guess the jury's still out on that, but I think the recent data has been really encouraging.
Home prices, I think people, put on hold, maybe buying because of the interest rates.
Sure.
Now that they're starting to head back down. What about home prices? Are they still up?
They're definitely still up. It's been an interesting dynamic because you've got higher borrowing costs that have resulted in really low mortgage applications, historically low. But at the same time, the supply has been really constrained, right? A lot of homeowners who've locked in these low mortgage rates are reluctant to move. It'd be more expensive to move to a smaller house in some cases. And then the price of building a new home is obviously up a lot. So you've got lower demand, but lower supply, and that's resulted in higher home prices. To your point, rates have come down a little bit, but they're still much higher than they were just a couple of years ago. So, where do we go from here? I think the conventional wisdom is that as rates come down, home prices should go up. And that may be the case here, but it's possible it's a little more nuanced than that, because if rates go low enough, then maybe it brings on new supply of homes, and there could be some relief there, but I think we're still a ways away from that. Unfortunately, it seems the path of least resistance might be up for home prices from here, but time will tell. I think maybe good news if you own a home, but a really challenging environment for home buyers right now with interest rates where they are and home prices on the rise.
Yeah, and you mentioned the supply. And this is everywhere. It's everywhere, the whole country. There's a shortage of housing.
Absolutely.
I remember the first house I bought. My interest rate was 11%, and that's a far cry from where things are today. And I know there were people at 13, 15% back in the 80s. Will we ever see anything like that again?
Hard to say. I think right now the general expectation is that rates should or may head lower from here. That would be an unexpected outcome, I would say.
Yeah. Dave, do you remember the interest rate on your first home?
I think it was around 8% or more. So we're getting kind of close to that range now, aren't we?
Are there people can still do variable rate mortgages? That's still an available product, right?
I think so. Yeah, I don't know if it's obviously not nearly as common, but.
All right, so 2024, we were just talking about early voting next week for the Michigan presidential primary. How much of an impact will the fact this is an election year have on markets, investing, the economy? I suppose, there's just a lot of impacts financially with an election.
Yep, certainly. I'll hold off on kind of speculating on how I think the election will play out, but I will say that elections tend to be a real source of volatility. There's no doubt about it, especially in times like these. But they're notoriously difficult to invest around, even if you knew who was going to win the election, to know what policies would be put into place, when they would be put into place, what the impact would be. Really difficult. And I think we all know a lot of the campaign promises that we hear often don't come into reality. So in general, what we see is a lot of market volatility leading up to elections, and usually some stability, generally decent performance after them, regardless of outcome, just because there's some certainty, and the markets prefer the known to the unknown. And I'd note that the economy and the markets have done just fine under both parties of leadership, all different divisions of Congress. So, it is something to be aware of. It is a source of volatility, but generally not something that we would suggest investors change their strategy in response to, especially not making really emotional decisions around it.
Yeah, the election campaign promises and threats this year.
That too.
Right.
So gambling, huge at the Super Bowl. People gambled more than ever before. Gambling, betting on sports, is that a good investment?
I don't know. I think that's not maybe my area of expertise, but I think you're right. There's certainly been a lot of growth in that industry. It seems like every commercial you see is for one of those programs, but there's a lot of competition as well.
Yeah, I think it's so pervasive in sports, but with legalization pretty much throughout the country, people just have to be careful.
Sure.
If it's not extra money, you shouldn't take your nest egg and put it on a team.
I agree.
They don't have those huge casinos in Vegas because they don't make money, I'll tell you that.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of investment in Vegas, and it's thanks to all the gamblers. All right, so 2024. Besides the election, what are some of the topics that you're discussing? Some of the things that your clients are concerned about when it comes to being an investor?
Sure. Yeah, I think the first theme we've been talking about a lot is just broader market participation. There's been this dynamic in the market where I mentioned the S&P 500 was up 26% last year, but really a lot of that came from just a handful of large technology names, particularly those that are related to that AI theme. But what's happened is a lot of those stocks have become a really big part of the index, and they trade at relatively high valuations. So if you look outside of those, a handful of names, kind of those 7 biggest stocks, returns have generally been much more muted, and also valuations are much more attractive. So we see some opportunity for what I'll call the rest of the market to catch up, the smaller companies, international stocks, things like that. Just highlighting the importance, we think, of being diversified across your portfolio and rebalancing, taking some profits out of those areas that have done well and potentially redeploying them to where there's better opportunity today.
Are there any areas in terms of investment that maybe people could just stay away from at this point?
That's a tricky question. I think it depends on what you're trying to do. But there's always going to be areas of the market that look expensive or have a lot of, we'll say too much enthusiasm around them. But it's kind of hard to point to any one thing today.
Yeah, a lot of people are right now in the process of doing their taxes. You have, I know, corporate, municipal, all kinds of clients. This busy time at Rehmann for you, Dave?
Yeah, it certainly is. This month and next month are some of the busier months of the year for us at Rehmann.
Is there anything, because I really haven't heard anything being discussed in Washington. I think they're preoccupied with, the border crisis and funding for war. But what about tax policy? Is that something that is being discussed? Is there anything in the hopper in Washington regarding taxes?
Well, tax really isn't my area of expertise, but it seems like with the divided Congress and Senate, it's been difficult to get any meaningful change passed by either party. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next year with the elections and how that kind of plays out.
Yeah, being an election year, again, those kinds of things, we wouldn't expect to see anything in that. No controversies. They don't want any controversies.
That's right.
And it was interesting, the House stayed up all night. Oh no, the Senate stayed up all night last night to pass a package for Ukraine. All night long. It's like 5, 6 in the morning they had their vote, but it's not likely to go past the House past the Senate because the House Speaker's already said it's going to arrive here DOA.
Yeah.
So. Investing, people have questions, they want to get some advice. You guys have a whole array of products and a whole team of people ready to help.
That's absolutely right. We're here to help. We've got a great team behind us.
Dave, get those golf clubs on a plane yet this winter?
I did in December and early January, so I was able to play a couple of times with my wife in the Dominican Republic, and we had a wonderful time. Yeah. So the last 3 holes I've played in 2024 were all birdies, so I'm on my way.
Right.
3 under the last 3. I won't tell you what I shot overall, but
Okay. Well, it's early.
That's right. Yeah.
Appreciate you guys coming in today.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us.
And congratulations on your big award,
Thanks.
Bart. Very, very proud of you to win that award.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Making his TV debut today from Rehmann Senior Manager and Director of Capital Management Group, Max Wellinger, and Managing Principal, Dave Page.